And for more on Russia's latest military moves, the timing and location of it all, I spoke to James Jatras. He's deputy director of the American Institute in Ukraine, a privately funded nonprofit group here in the United States.
I think it's a deliberate effort at being somewhat provocative on the Russians' part. Obviously, Russia has very little direct national interest in places like the Caribbean or Australia. I think there's an element of tit for tat here where the Russians are saying, you mess around with us in our own neighborhood, you challenge us on our own turf, we're going to show we can project power too, even though obviously the capabilities are nowhere near the same. Somebody once quipped that the Russian position is, yes, you call us an aggressive country because we placed it right in the middle of all your bases. That I think there is resentment on the Russian side about the pressure of NATO directly on their borders and challenging them in areas like Ukraine and to some extent Syria that they considered very important to them. And they're going to show, hey, we can push back.
What do you make of the timing of this, though, with the G20 summit just ahead? And what do you make of relations with other countries? Are they at an all-time low? Are we going to see what some are saying could be another Cold War?
Oh, I don't think it could be a Cold War. It is a Cold War. There's no question that between the United States and Russia, there is a Cold War. The real question now is which way will the Europeans flop? Will they continue to be frog-marched by the U.S. into a confrontational policy with the Russians, or at some point will they pull back and say, this is not in our interests, and cut some sort of a separate deal with the Russians? I think that's one thing Moscow has in mind. And frankly, I think outside of Europe, China, India, many other places in the world, I think there's some silent cheering, and maybe not so silent cheering, that somebody is telling Washington, you don't rule the world.
It appears at the ASEAN summit that the U.S. President Barack Obama had some words with Dmitry Medvedev, and sanctions were apparently discussed. Want to get your reaction to that. Could anything come out of a meeting like this, and could it be positive? It appears that these two men had, at one time, a very cordial relationship.
I don't think much positive is going to come out of it. I think that, unfortunately, we do see a certain ossification of the international system, people being locked in to their script. I just saw a report today, the Obama administration has decided we can't do much about the Islamic State until we get rid of the Assad government first, so we're back to regime change in Syria, which clearly the Russians, the Iranians, the others are not going to allow. We're seeing increased tensions in Ukraine, not decreased. I don't think there's much prospect that the sanctions will be removed anytime soon, which means essentially no return to normal ties. So we're still in the escalation mode, not any kind of de-escalation, I don't think.
That was James Jatras, Deputy Director of the American Institute in Ukraine.